Hey, how are we? Good. I am glad to see you all today. Welcome to our first Sunday in our Advent series. Christmas is a wonderful time of year, and I didn't always feel that way. I used to work retail, and I worked at a drugstore, Long's Drugs, and before that was Drug Emporium. It was great. And Christmas was a weird time because people would come in and do their Christmas shopping at a drugstore, which made me ask some questions. Like, does your nephew really need Selsun Blue? Like, is that Merry Christmas? Here's some dandruff shampoo. It was just an interesting place. But people around the holidays, they get really intense. And there's a lot of different challenges that I had to work through while I was at Long's Drugs. And the biggest challenge was the music. Because the day after Thanksgiving, Here Comes Santa Claus, infinite repeat, and it drove me bonkers. And it took a long time. And so if you are in retail, I'm with you. I understand. We have a support group that meets on Thursdays after closing. No, we don't. But I will be praying for you because this is a difficult season. And if you go to a mall or you go to a store and you see people being mean to the people who work at those stores, be nice. Be nice. Don't be like the jerks, all right? It's Christmas. It's time to celebrate and to be kind to one another and to live out this Jesus message that he has changed us to be like decent people. That's part of what he wants us to be, decent people in the world. And so as we walk through this series, knowing that Christmas is so tied to music for so many of us, it's one of those things that I'm now beginning to like Christmas music. It helped because, I bought Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and I was like, oh, wait, this music rocks. It literally rocks. And so it changed my perspective a little bit. But today, this series we're starting is going to be looking at songs in the Bible and songs that revolve around the themes of Advent. And so there's four themes. There's hope, peace, joy, and love. And each week leading up to Christmas, we're going to talk about one of these different themes. And we're going to be talking about a song from the Bible that highlights these themes. And so today, we're going to be looking at Psalm 25. And I'm going to ask my friend Connor to join me on the platform. Connor is going to read this for us, and then I'm going to light our first candle in this Advent display. And if you want to celebrate Advent at your home with your family, there's a great Advent guide that's available. If you're going down to pick up your kids, you can grab one of those right there on that little bookshelf thing. You can also get it through Facebook. Pastor Kate shared it on Facebook. Advent is a wonderful time to focus our hearts on Jesus. So Connor, would you please read Psalm 25 for us?
In you, Lord, my God, I put my trust. I trust in you. Do not let me be put to shame, nor let my enemies triumph over me. No one who hopes in you will ever be put to shame, but shame will come on those who are treacherous without cause. Show me your ways, Lord. Teach me your paths. Guide me in your truth and teach me. For you are my God, my Savior, and my hope is in you all day long. Remember, Lord, your great mercy and love, for they are from of old. Do not remember my sins of my youth and my rebellious ways. According to your love, remember me, for you, Lord, are good. Good and upright is the Lord. Therefore he instructs sinners in his ways. He guides the humble in what is right and teaches them his way. All the ways of the Lord are loving and faithful toward those who keep the demands of his covenant. For the sake of your name, Lord, forgive my iniquity, though it is great. Who then are those who fear the Lord? He will instruct them in the ways they should choose. They will spend their days in prosperity, and their descendants will inherit the land. The Lord confides in those who fear him. He makes his covenant known to them. My eyes are ever on the Lord, for only he will release my feet from the snare. Turn to me and be gracious to me, for I am lonely and afflicted. Relieve the troubles of my heart and free me from my anguish. Look on my affliction and my distress, and take away all my sins. See how numerous are my enemies, and how fiercely they hate me. Guard my life and rescue me. Do not let me be put to shame, for I take refuge in you. May integrity and uprightness protect me, because my hope, Lord, is in you. Deliver Israel, O God, from all their troubles.
Thank you, Connor. I appreciate it. Give Connor a hand. Good job, man. Now, you may be wondering, what does that have to do with Christmas? And yeah, I can understand that. And, there's only so many verses that actually talk about the birth of Jesus that Christmas is actually kind of hard. And every year you're like, did I say this already just recently? It's like, yeah, you said it about a year ago. And so looking at these Psalms then and these songs, trying to understand, like, how does this point to Christmas? How does this point to Jesus? And this Psalm, Psalm 25, was written by a man named David. David was called by God to be king of Israel. There was one problem. There was already a king in Israel. And so David had this promise in his life from God, but he didn't know when this promise would be fulfilled. And so what did he do? Well, he served anyway. He began to serve that king. He served Saul. He played music for him. He was in Saul's army. He fought battles for Israel. And so as he was waiting patiently and living in hope for the promise that God would fulfill, David served. And as we talk about hope today, I want to highlight a few truths about hope. And the first one is that hope inspires godly service. Because when we serve and recognizing that the world is not the way we want it to be right now, but God can use us to help bring a difference in the world. God can use our service to bring glory to his name. God can use our willingness to step in and serve to help other people discover, trust, and love Jesus. Hope inspires godly service. Hope is not something where we should just say, well, someday this will happen, and then we just sit around and wait. More often than not, when we see people who have given up hope, is because they waited for something to happen to them instead of entering into what God wanted to do through them. Hope inspires and motivates godly service. And while David was serving, something that's very interesting as he served in his life is he drew people around him because he was hopeful. Hope draws people. It's really easy to be a cynic, to just look at everything and just be like, no, that won't work. No, that's a bad idea. Well, that'll never be a possibility. And cynicism is the voice of our age. You go on the Facebook and somebody posts a picture of their cat, and one of the first comments might be, why isn't it a dog? Because people are just so cynical. It's like, just celebrate the cat, man. And I wouldn't, personally. I would be the guy. Why isn't it a dog? Dogs are awesome. But that's my problem. That's my cynicism. It's so easy to be a cynic. And when you look at the story of David, as he was serving Saul, Saul disobeyed God. Saul began to have difficulty and challenges, and instead of turning his heart back to God, he started to dwell on his failure, and he became cynical. And while David is this hopeful person, knowing that God is on their side, that God is rescuing the people of Israel, that God is doing amazing things, people gravitated towards David because he was hopeful. As followers of Jesus today, we should be a hopeful people, recognizing that God's not done yet, that God's doing amazing things, and he wants to do those things through us. And if we are a voice of hope in this world, talking about what Jesus is doing, not just talking about ourselves and how cool we are, because I love you. I'm going to tell you the truth right now, church. You're not that great. You're more like David than you think. In this psalm that we read, Psalm 25, David says, I know my afflictions, I know my sin, I know my brokenness, but God, my hope is still in you. And when we take our eyes off of our brokenness and say, God, I need you, that's a statement of hope. And when we recognize that that hope is what draws people to Jesus, do they see that hope in you? Do they see you as an agent of hope? Or are you just one more, why isn't it a dog comment on Facebook? Or are you hopeful? Are you celebrating what God is doing? And when you look at the life of David, God put a promise in his life. You're going to be king. But it didn't always work out great for him. He went through a lot of difficulty. And this psalm, in Psalm 25, is talking about the difficulties that he was facing, the enemies that he had. As he was serving, who one of his greatest enemy was? Saul, the king of Israel, tried to kill David multiple times. But David never gave up hope. After David became king, he had enemies within the kingdom who tried to take him down. His own son tried to overthrow him. But David never gave up hope. Why? Because his hope was in the Lord. And when our hope is in God, our hope can help us endure hardship. And it's not to just be dismissive of the difficulties we face. No, we face hardship. We face challenges. And some of you in this room, you're facing relational challenges. You're facing family challenges. You're facing challenges with your jobs. You might get laid off. There's difficulty in your life. But the hope that we have in Jesus is recognizing that whatever challenges we have right now, those are not the end of our story. That God is still writing a story for our lives. And when our hope is in the Lord, He helps us through those difficulties. He helps us through those challenges. And remembering like Psalm 25 about where David is crying out to God, this is kind of a victory song, even though he's recognizing his own brokenness, his need, because he knows that God will provide the victory. That is not my strength, it's not your strength. It's not hope in me, it's not hope in you. It's the hope of Jesus that dwells in you, looking to what Jesus wants to do through you, that brings hope into this world. So if you're feeling hopeless today, I want to encourage you today, that is a great day to ask the Lord to begin to change your perspective, to begin to turn your eyes to hope in Jesus. And there's a couple things in this psalm that we can learn. And I'm going to do this briefly. And so if we're looking to restore hope, the first thing is that we should pray for God to intervene. Pray. Now maybe you are at that point where your hope is so depleted that prayer just feels like talking to the air. The challenges that are so big in your life, you just don't even know what is prayer going to do. But I want to encourage you just to start to pray. Just because something's hard doesn't mean it's impossible. Just because a mountain seems like you can't climb it doesn't mean you can't climb it. Think about the difficult things that you've accomplished in your life. If you've ever run a marathon or a half marathon or even watched a marathon on TV and then changed the channel immediately because it's like, that looks hard. You know, marathon running is difficult. And the people who've run 26.2 miles, they didn't just wake up and say, today's I'm just going to go. Today I'm going to run 26.2 miles. They didn't do that. No, they said, I would like to try to do that. And they started training. They just started running. And it might have been like, I'm going to run to the end of the block. And then be like, why am I doing this? And then tomorrow go, maybe run to the end of the next block. And they train over time. And they get to the point where when you cross the finish line of a marathon or a half marathon, I've done 2 half marathons, so I'm counting it as a whole marathon. That's how math works, right? So, but when you cross that finish line, it's like, oh, I actually did it. It seemed impossible, but it can be done. And sometimes when we pray, it seems so difficult, and we look at the challenge like, I don't know what you're going to do. But that shouldn't keep us from praying and saying, God, I don't know what I'm going to do. I need you to rescue me, and my hope is in you. Another way to restore hope is to remember what God has already done. When we gather together as a church on Sunday, part of the practice of gathering is to remember God's goodness. And we remember God's goodness through the songs we sing. We remember God's goodness through the preaching of the word. We remember God's goodness through celebrating communion. And all of this is to remember so that it stirs up hope in us, so that we don't forget God's goodness. And we keep our eyes on what He is doing and wants to do in the world. And then also to remember God's future plan. Now, if you've read the Bible is a hopeful book. And in the middle of all of our struggles, we should know the end of the Bible. And I'm going to spoiler if you haven't finished it yet. God wins. He wins. He overcomes the power of darkness and evil. He renews and transforms this broken world. God wins. And so whatever challenges we face, they are temporary. They feel huge. They feel insurmountable. They feel impossible, but God wins. And when we find ourselves in those hopeless situations, we can always call out to God. We can remember what He's done, and we can remember what He's promised to do. David, in the middle of his struggles, was remembering that God wins, that God promised these victories to him. And then also, David, in this psalm, he says, I'm lonely and afflicted. So if we're trying to stir up hope, we need to surround ourselves with godly community. Don't try to follow Jesus on your own. Don't try to pursue your life path by yourself. Don't try to find yourself even. Find Jesus. Follow him. Pastor Byron talked about that last week, and we're not trying to find ourselves. We're trying to find Jesus. And Jesus is our hope. And when we find Jesus, you know who else is finding Jesus? All these other Christians who recognize their brokenness, recognize their need, and say, I need Jesus too. And so we need to surround ourselves with godly community. And in those conversations with the community, when we're feeling hopeless, we can share that with somebody. And we can encourage one another and build each other up. Surround yourselves with godly community. And maybe today you're feeling hopeless. Maybe you've got something that's on your mind, it's on your heart, it's weighing you down. I want to encourage you today. This is a godly community. And on your Discover card, there is a place where we write down next steps. And on the back, let's all take out our Discover cards. And Joshua was talking about them earlier today. And just on the back, where there's some next steps, one of the ones I want to ask you about right now is, what do you need hope for? Is there something? Is it work? Is it financial? Is it school? Is it a relationship? Where are you feeling hopeless? And in the simple act of writing them down, these things down, it's an act of confession. We're giving it up to the Lord and saying, God, I need your help. And as a pastoral staff, we pray over these cards every Tuesday. And we'll pray for you. We'll pray that the Spirit of God brings hope into this situation, gives you wisdom, gives you direction, helps you through a difficult season, and lets you live and dwell in his hope. So let us know so we can be praying for you. And when we do put our hope in Jesus, we also see that hope transforms us. It transforms us because we see how we are not the heroes of our own story. We're following after the hero, Jesus, who came and laid his life down to rescue us. And Christmas is a season of hope. When we read the Bible, the Old Testament points to a hope outside of itself that is fulfilled in Jesus. And now, looking back at what Jesus has accomplished, we look back and say, look at what he has done. Look at how it all began when he was born to those poor people, Mary and Joseph, and he was literally born in a barn. That's Jesus. And every baby is a hopeful experience. There's so much potential, so much that's laying in front of that child's life. But that child, Jesus, the Son of God, miraculously conceived, lived a sinless, perfect life, and laid that life down on the cross to rescue us from our sin, to transform our hearts. That all began at Christmas. And our hope in Jesus begins with this little baby who came to rescue us. And today, if you are not yet following Jesus, I want to encourage you to let Jesus be your hope. Let Jesus transform your soul and your life. And if you are looking for hope today, you came here for a reason. You're looking for hope. And I want you to know that there's no hope outside of Jesus that will sustain you. Will you today trust Jesus and put your faith in him? And if you're ready to say, yeah, I know I need Jesus, will you let us know on your card? There's a part where you can mark, become a follower of Jesus. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all figured out. David, who wrote that psalm that we read, did not have it all figured out. He was far from perfect, but he recognized his brokenness and he cried out to God. God, rescue me. And today is a day to cry out to God. And during this Christmas season, when we celebrate and remember the birth of Jesus, this is a wonderful time to let that hope for Jesus, in Jesus, be born in you. And that hope is not just to stay with you, it's for the world. And so I'm going to ask us to be thinking about that hope. How do we share that hope with the world? And part of this whole series is tied to a tradition here at Creekside. Every Christmas, we take some time to turn our heart and mind towards our global partnerships with missionaries and different organizations that we work with. And in your program, there's this brochure. It's blue and white, and it talks about our Christmas missions offering. And throughout this series, we're going to talk with some of our partners that we're working with in this offering. And today, I want to introduce you to some friends of ours that have been a part of our church here at Creekside from a distance as we've been partnering with them, Glenn and Dana Johnson. And so, Glenn and Dana, would you join me on the platform? Would you welcome them? They're nice people. Say, hey, Glenn and Dana. All right. So Glenn and Dana are a part of Continental Theological Seminary, and there is a video, and I realized that I was supposed to play. This is my second time. You'd think I would get better at it, but no. Yeah, we're going to watch this video together. So it's a video that showcases the ministry of CTS, and so let's go ahead and roll that.
This is an incredible environment. Every year we have students from at least 30 different nations come.
The goal of CTS is to raise up people, biblical people and pastors, singers, ministers, to go to other parts of the world and spread the gospel just as Christ has commanded us to do.
We are based in Europe, in Brussels, Belgium, which is actually known as the capital of Europe. And our students come from all over. For example, this year only, we have students coming from more than 34 countries.
And there's nowhere else that I can think of where you're experiencing so many different cultures in such a small student body.
Spiritual life is what attracts me the most. The changing of your personality and character and letting God form you.
I really love CTS because we're a small community and it makes us like a family here.
30 countries, over 20 languages, all come together and they focus on what is the same about preaching the gospel in all those countries, in all those cultures.
Right. Well, Glenn and Dana, we're so glad you're here today. And real quick, you talked a lot in the first service, so I want to hear from Dana. Dana, what led you guys to Belgium and to Continental Theological Seminary?
Wow. Let me think back. It's been a while. No.
Because you've been there how long?
Almost. This has been 19. We went when we were about 10. So
wait a minute.
Actually, we went after we'd only been married for 3 years.
Wow.
And no kids at the time. And both of us had felt definitely a call to serve and to minister to people. And Glenn, since probably the age of 18, God had placed in him just a passion and drew him to the continent of Europe.
Wow.
And he didn't know how that would play out in his life. And it wasn't until, that was at age 18, and I don't think we went till you were 30-something, 35. Wow. But just God, he didn't lose that hope. I mean, it's not just a play on words. It's true that God kept that hope alive, and he brought us together somehow to do that. And so we went when we were a young married couple. We went for a short-term assignment because I was actually very uncertain if that was really where I wanted to spend my life. And God used that 2 years to just, to say this is the place. And actually just watching that, it's weird, but I get all choked up and like homesick because it's really, it's wonderful to be back in the Northwest, which is where we're both from, and with our families. It's a privilege to be here this year to be with them. But that's our home. Like that's where we belong for now, at least. That's where God's put us. So.
Wonderful. Awesome.
Anyway.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing that. And so with CTS, like the she's like, I'm done with this. So the work, I mean, we all can. I mean, you preachers, missionaries, just wind them us, we go. So the work that you guys are doing, what specifically are you doing with CTS? How are you helping bring that hope to the world?
We went originally, I'd been a music and worship pastor for many years, and we originally went as the music director for the school, for the seminary. Part of the program is we aim to give the pastors a total training. So if they go out and the church needs it, they could do it or know how to do it. Part of the curriculum was for all the students what worship is from a biblical perspective, not just how you do it at your home church, but what does it mean and how do you make it meaningful? And part of my duties at the beginning were as music and worship director, as part of the curriculum, training them how to make that happen. Because as you know, worship is a central part of a community of believers. And so that's how we started. And then as you go, like anywhere, the longer you're there, the more things get kind of shoved onto your plate.
I know how that is.
Yeah, there you go. So along with that now, I serve in administration, doing a lot of, actually like a dean of students. It's called director of student life. All the non-academic aspects of student life come under my supervision. There we go. And then Dana works in the academic office as a liaison between the master's level professors and students and coordinator of all those things. And so, so that's what we do at the seminary. And as you heard, we draw from many, many nations. And part of what we do is building a culture there. We really create our own culture because there's 30-some nations, 22 languages, and we, as I said in the video, we focus on what's the same. You can't focus on the differences because there are too many differences. If this were our chapel, if you look down your row, every third person would be a different nationality. And that's the diversity that we work with. And so we focus on what can we pull and what can we train them in, how can we train them in the short period of time they're there to be the most effective when they return. And we're excited to do it.
Awesome. Yeah, can you tell us a couple stories of some of the people that you work with?
Absolutely. As you know, until Jason told me about the theme today of hope, I hadn't really looked at it in the way that it really links, but it really, really does, because Europe is a continent that is searching for hope. For many, many years, they're really smart and they're really analytical and they can plan it all the way, and they have explained God out of relevance. And so European, it's like religion was back then, and this is a modern age, and da-da-da. And religion and God really has no place in the modern society in their thinking. But yet, now they think they've found those answers. Inside, they really are, as you have said all day, searching for hope of some sort. Inside, in their most honest sense, they understand there's got to be more. And they're searching for that. And so that hope, and the continent is hopeless from a facial perspective, from a superficial perspective. But underneath that, God's answer to that hopelessness is always people. And God is calling people, and we get a chance to be a part of their training. You'll see in the pictures in just a moment, God calls different folks to different things. In the Word, it says He gives gifts to the church, and one of those is missionaries. And God is calling some European students to be missionaries. Antonella and Salvatore, you'll see in the pictures, are students that came to us. They're Italian by heritage, but Belgian by upbringing. And they felt called to missions, went on one of our summer missions trips, actually on their honeymoon, which was an odd thing, but it's a long story. He wanted to go, and I'm like, Salvatore, you're getting married this summer. He said, yeah, she'll go. And they spent 6 weeks. The week after they were married, went to the Congo for 6 weeks and did a missions trip and had a phenomenal experience, came back with their call even more cemented. They went back the second summer and did it again. And God is calling folks. One of the exciting things about what we do is that we don't have to go over there and devise these grand schemes. God has a plan. Yeah. And it's these people, and He calls these folks, and we get a chance to come alongside and help them train. There's other people. One of the photos you'll see is Andy and Coralie. Andy was a professional musician in the Congo, came to Christ, and eventually led each member of his family to Christ. And then, through circumstances, immigrated to Belgium, met Coralie, and they feel called to ministry. Now they're in the southern part of our country planting churches with some other alumni of our school. Other folks like, you'll see Colin and Katya. Colin is from Canada. Katya is German and British by heritage. They feel called to be in pastoral ministry. Their call isn't a real specific one. It's a very general one, but yet God speaks like that sometimes, and it's not until like the moment before that you see the open door, and they're preparing, and we've had been privileged to be a part of their life. Thibaut is another student you'll find in this picture. Thibaut is one of these evangelist guys. If you've met him, fearless of anything or anyone, and he'll walk up to somebody on the street. Hi, how are you doing? How can I pray for you? And other people would just be, but that's his passion. God's placed that within him. And he would go in our city, in the city of Brussels, a city of 6 million people. He'd walk into the city, down the street, walk up to perfect strangers. And that zeal that he had was contagious. And he began to lead teams of our students that would go down and do the same thing. And they would come back the next week after doing that on a weekend with amazing stories of how, because they stepped out. I mean, some of the students were fearful. Thibaut's not fearful. But, and we missed his slide, actually. He must not be in there. But these students come back, it's testimonies about what God was able to do because they said yes to this opportunity. Sonia, in this picture, Sonia was called to teach. She loved studies, amazing student, and just student of biblical languages and theology and all of this. And after being at our school for several years, doing several degrees, we were finally able this last summer to bring her on staff, which is unusual because most of our school is funded with missionaries. But Sonia had the skills and the languages that we needed, and she's now one of our adjunct faculty doing some of our classes in extensions. And so it's exciting after being here this long as well to watch the lives of the students afterwards. It's not just like, oh, okay, wonder what will happen. Now we know, thanks to Facebook, now we know what they're up to, sometimes at this very moment. But it's exciting and thrilling for us to be a part of these students' lives.
Awesome. And part of our project with the Christmas missions offering is we're partnering with Continental Theological Seminary to build a research center. And that doesn't sound super exciting.
No.
I'm a nerd. And when I heard about it, I was like, research.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about what the research center is going to be used for.
What is a research center and why should I care? Okay, I have Google, right?
Yeah.
I don't need a research center. Here's the deal, okay? Research is more than Google.
What?
Yeah, sorry, if you work for Google. No, what a research center has allowed us to do it conceptually, and it's exciting when you grasp it. It's exciting because we have a chance to physically make a difference in the training of these students that you've seen in our physical campus, okay? Extension education and online education is fantastic in our setting because of the language and cultural things and the huge financial commitment. It's not possible. But what is possible are certain things like extension schools, which we're doing. We're expanding to locations, extension locations, which will be located in churches in Germany, over the border in France, and in the very south of France, in the city of Grenoble. These extension centers are coming up. Another exciting part is this research center. What has happened is because Europe has 20-some countries, and all of these countries have national churches that can understand their nation and the history of Christianity in their nation and what's going on. But on a global scale across the continent, which is very easy for Americans to study Christianity in America because we have the same language, we have the same government, we have the same media, we have the same everything. In Europe, it's not that easy because you've got all these different countries, all these different languages and governments, and all these different histories. And so what we're endeavoring to do is to expand the influence of the seminary beyond the people that can come to anybody in Europe it's essentially through publication, sometimes book publication, sometimes internet publication, but to utilize the students and their calling and their desire and their passion for studies, to study these cultures, and it's going to focus around 3 areas. The first of which is not secular. I'm remembering the other 2. No, they're not in order. They're in any given order. So the first one in my thinking is secularism in Europe. Yeah. Okay, as I said, Europeans have explained God away and into the margins, and he's not really relevant. And how does that affect the church? And how, more importantly, how can the church affect that? And those are big macro level studies that a local pastor already working a full-time job with a family and pastoring in his free time, those are studies that take a lot more time than they have a chance to do. And so with our research center focusing on secularism in Europe, The second, in no particular order, topic is Islam in Europe. If you watch the news at all, you'll understand Islam and the Muslim faith is a quickly rising percentage of Europeans. And that has an effect on the church. It will have an effect very quickly on the political life and on the daily life of all Europeans. And how does the rise of Islam in Europe affect the church? More importantly, how can the church affect that? Those are studies that are beyond the depth of the pastor's ability and free time. The third aspect is the history of Pentecostalism. The way, as a Pentecostal denomination, the Assemblies of God, we know very well, it's been very well documented how Pentecostalism grew in America. At the same time, it was developing in countries around Europe in all those languages and cultures. But on a macro scale, how did that develop and what are the impacts of that on a continent-wide basis? And so those three areas will be what the Research Center focuses on. We'll have students, undergrads and graduates doing various projects, looking at these things, with the goal that at the end of these things we can publish those to help the broader continental European church and help them in their impact to have resources in a way that they could never develop on their own. And so that's why Research Center matters. It's a real macro kind of a look at Christianity in Europe in a way that a local church pastor just doesn't have the time or energy to do.
Yeah, and you said it real quickly, but you said that pastors are doing this part-time. The full-time pastor is an American luxury.
Yep.
And in a lot of the world, it is like they are part-time, and so resourcing our pastors around the world is an opportunity that we have to make a huge difference. And the Research Center is not just for CTS.
No.
It's for anybody
Absolutely.
in the church, and in Europe in particular, to have what resources that they need to
Absolutely.
minister well.
Yep.
And so we are partnering as our church. We have a small part of this project, but the Northwest Ministry Network that we're a part of, we, at our annual conference last year, we committed to be major partners with CTS this year. And so we have a part, but we're not alone. Like a lot of churches are coming together to help make this happen, because as we do this, as we help our pastors minister well, they share the hope of Jesus. And that's what we want to do. And so the Christmas missions offering, Glenn and Dana in their everyday work, and the missionaries that we support all throughout the year, their goal is to bring hope to hopeless people. And so we thank you guys. You're on the front lines, and you guys are doing great work. And so I'm just so grateful that you're here with us. You have a table in the lobby. And so after service, if you want to chat with Glenn and Dana, get some of their prayer cards, ask more specific questions about how they can partner with you guys. And then your kids are here, too.
Yes. Yeah, our boys are here in the front row. Ben and Nathan, you stand up?
They're
We have twin boys that are 12, and our daughter is 7, and she's downstairs.
Downstairs.
In class, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, very cool. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Now, all of this, as I said, is to bring hope to the world. And my prayer for us as a church is that we would not just let Christmas come and go with us saying, like, well, wasn't that a nice time of Christmas? But to say, let's do Christmas on purpose. And with the Christmas missions offering, that's one of the ways that we say, yes, we're going to do Christmas on purpose. And a couple weeks ago, we introduced the Christmas missions offering brochure. And then last week we talked about it, and I asked you to be praying about partnering with us. And today, if you are ready to make your pledge, you could just fill this out and drop it in the offering bucket in a little bit. But if you need to take it home and pray about what God wants you to do, then please do take this home. Look it over and see the work that we're doing and what we are hoping to accomplish this year through the generosity of the people of Creekside as we serve and bless others and provide resources and help people discover, trust, and love Jesus around the world. And so thank you for doing that. Thank you for being a part of this. And every year, I'm always amazed. Last year, our goal, I believe, was $100,000, and $106,000 came in over the whole year, which was awesome. And, we didn't meet our goal at Christmas time. We were at like $96,000, and I was so excited because I was like, that's still a really tremendous amount of generosity. And then I looked in October at where we were at, and I was like, how did we exceed our goal? People just kept giving towards these different projects. And so thank you. If you've been a part of this before, thank you. Today, if this is your first time where you're saying, I'm going to be a part of the CMO, awesome. We're so glad to work together to help all of these different ministries and partners to bless our neighbors and bless the world. And all of this is because Jesus has blessed us. Jesus has provided hope for us. And one of the ways that we remember that hope is as we celebrate communion together. And I know this is a super hard shift, but we're going to celebrate communion. We're going to take some time to focus our hearts on what Jesus has done. And I'm going to ask those who are serving communion to find their places and the band to join me on the platform because we're going to sing as a part of this response to Jesus and his mercy, his hope, his love for us. And the Apostle Paul talks about communion in his letter to the church in Corinth, and he encouraged them to examine their hearts, to examine how are they doing as the body of Christ. Are they serving one another? Are they looking out for one another? Are they letting their faith shape their interactions? Are they letting their faith shape their hope? Are they letting their faith do more than just be something they agree to, but something that they place their life in and trust Jesus with that? And he gave them instructions about the communion, and he talked about the bread, which represents the body of Christ that was broken for us. And in his brokenness, we find wholeness. He talked about the cup, which represents the blood that was shed for the forgiveness of our sin. And in his sacrifice, our hearts are transformed. And instead of longing after sin, he changes our hearts to long after Jesus and his righteousness. And so when we take the bread and the cup, we're taking a moment to say, Jesus, my hope is in you. And today, if this is your first Sunday where you're celebrating communion, awesome. Awesome. If you're saying yes to Jesus today, then I want to encourage you. We have some folks who are going to be available in the back in just a moment, and they would love to pray with you if you're making that decision. If you would please also let us know on your Discover card that you're saying, I'm trusting Jesus today. Because we want to give you some next steps and help you on this journey, because you don't need to try to follow after Jesus by yourself. That's what this community is for, to walk together to follow after Jesus. And so I'm going to give you a couple instructions. We're going to come down these aisles here and then kind of loop back around to your seats on that way. And then go and take some time just to pray with your friend, your family. Pray by yourself and reflect on what Jesus has done for you. And then when you're ready, receive the elements. There won't be any instruction on when to do that. And then the band's going to be singing. And you can join in and sing some songs together. You can reflect on what Jesus is doing in your heart, in your life. This is a time to respond to Jesus and just to remember what he has done for us. If you're unable to come to the front for any reason, just wait for the line to go down, and when the servers make their way to the back, you can just wave to them, and they'll bring the elements to you. But this is our time to respond, to let the Spirit speak to us, to challenge us, to remind us of our hope in Jesus. I'm going to pray and then invite you to the table. Lord, we thank you for your sacrifice for us. We thank you for the hope that you have made possible through your death and through your resurrection. And so, Lord, today, as we remember your sacrifice, help us, Lord, to live in grace and to share that hope with the world, to proclaim it wherever we can to people who are longing for hope. And so, Lord, as we remember your body, we remember your blood, help us, Lord, to be expressions of your mercy, of your grace, of your hope in every aspect of our lives. Amen. Amen. You can come to the table when you're ready.